Hello there and welcome to M's Kitchen. We spent 2 glorious weeks in Namibia working on our next recipe book. And so in doing so we got to watch lots of South African TV and got properly and fully inspired by all the sort of game and innovation that South Africans bring to braais and potjies and all that kind of stuff. So in my book, Naked Baking, there is a Milktart recipe. It's my grandmother's Milktart recipe, and it typically makes 5 Milktarts at a time. So Milktart is a bit like custard, a tart that you get in the UK, and it's also a bit like the Portuguese casa de nata. With the exception that the methodology is slightly different. You don't caramelize the top like the casa de nata, and it's not as yellow as you would get with custard tarts here in the UK. So we're going to do a little twist on Milktart, and we're going to incorporate it in a few different dishes. This is a first for me, but I like to challenge myself, and I'd like you to experiment like this as well. So we're going to be taking a Milktart, we're going to make a Milktart filling, and then we're going to turn them into samosas. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to be making Milktart shooters. So shooters obviously classically full of alcohol, so this is, you've got to adjust the sort of quantities and stuff. So I'm going to just talk you quickly through the ingredients. I've taken this water bottle and I'm just in the process. I've got a can full of condensed milk. So this is just normal condensed milk that I've got in this bottle, and because you kind of need a bottle in which to mix it, and I don't have half an empty bottle of vodka. It's not really the sort of thing I keep in my cupboard, to be honest. So, and then I have got, this is just 700 mils of vodka, and then you need the equivalent to 1 can of condensed milk in evaporated milk. So what I've done is I've taken the condensed milk out, okay? So this is fairly empty. So I'm going to try and reuse this because this will be the measure for all of the ingredients for this dish. But before I do that, I need to get the Milktart started because of course that takes a bit longer to make. So what I've got is I have just pre-warmed the milk because the milk needs to cool down, otherwise it's going to be too hot and it's going to split the eggs, and obviously we don't want that. So I've got 560 mils of full cream milk, okay, full cream milk for Milktart preferably. So 560 mils of full cream milk. I've got 4 cardamom pods in here, and then a stick of cinnamon, and then I have got a tablespoon of just butter that I've melted in this, and I'm just kind of stirring this. And the reason for doing this little bit in advance is you need to infuse it in the cardamom and the cinnamon because it fragrances the milk, and it gives it that really sort of lovely, great Milktart flavor. So cardamom pods isn't a typical thing for Milktart, but there's no reason why it can't be. It's that sort of nostalgic. It's quite Indian in its origin because a lot of Indian desserts have got cardamom in it. So then the rest of the ingredients is pretty simple, okay? You've got 2 tablespoons, so 30 mils of plain flour, 2 tablespoons, 30 mils of corn flour. You've got a third of a cup, 80 mils of sugar, and I'm using caster sugar. And then you're supposed to have 2 extra large eggs separated. So when you do the samosas, you don't use the egg whites because obviously the egg whites will make it more runny, and you kind of try and avoid it. You want to have a sort of thicker filling. And then I need some phyllo pastry. So I've got 1 pack of phyllo pastry, and what I've done is I've just taken it out of the fridge, as you can see, and I put it flat on this surface, and I am taking a ruler And if I just flip it over so I can see where I actually did my cuts. Now remember, phyllo pastry dries out really, really fast, okay? So if you're going to do this, try and kind of get that bit sorted. And I've just scored it slightly where I want the strips to go. So I'll show you how to do this in a second. I just want to do the custard for the Milktart, the filling bit first. So remember, I put the milk in here, brought it to the boil, and I've let that sit now for the last sort of 15 minutes, okay? So you kind of need to remove the cinnamon stick now, and also the cardamom pods. So really, really quickly, you just mix the 2 bits of flour. Now, it's such little flour, I'm not going to bother putting this in a different bowl, because that's complete waste. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my classic sort of cheaty method, and I'm just going to use a fork and just mixing the two. Now remember, the corn flour is the thickening agent for this, so this is going to be pretty thick if it uses exactly the same amount of flour to corn flour ratio. So just bear that in mind, this is quite a thick mixture. So taking the egg yolks, I'm just going to whisk this. 60 mils has gone in there. Okay, so all I'm doing now is I'm taking just a little bit of that, and then I'm adding that to this. Now I've got 5 mils of vanilla essence in there as well. Okay, you don't need to use vanilla essence, you can use any kind of essence that you want. I love sort of citrusy essences, Madagascan, oranges, Seville, you know, all that kind of stuff. It gives it a nice different dimension to it, and it works perfectly beautifully with things like cardamom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to very, very lightly, I have to kind of combine these things now. So I'm putting in the flour into the eggs mixture, and I'm just using my balloon whisk for this because it's going to thicken up really, really quickly. Remember, this is cold. When you're using corn flour, you don't want to do this into a warm mixture. The reason for that is because corn flour expands really, really quickly, and if you do it into a warm mixer straight away, it tends to form lumps. So by putting it into a little bit of cold water, and in this instance the egg and mixture, it just ensures that you haven't got any lumps like you can see there. Now, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to combine these 3 ingredients, okay, with the warm milk. So when it starts to warm through, now remember this hasn't cooled down completely. I brought it to the boil, infused it with the cinnamon. I have then taken it off and let it sit for 15 minutes. So because it's got a thick base, this pot, it hasn't completely cooled down. So it's already starting to thicken, and it's at this point where I am just quickly putting in the caster sugar. And the reason for using caster sugar is because caster sugar, the granules are much finer, and therefore they dissolve quicker. So that means, again, you don't have the risk of burning. So now this needs to get to a thick consistency, and it needs to boil. But do not, whatever you do, stop stirring this. Okay, this is thick. Okay, and this now needs to cool down. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that like that for a little while. Now it depends on the pot you use, your temperature of your room, all that kind of stuff. That's going to determine how long that needs to cool down for. But what you don't want to do is you don't want that to be hot going on to the phyllo pastry. So before we do the phyllo pastry bit, I'm just going to show you how to make the Milktart shooter. So this has now had enough time for that condensed milk can to run into this bottle. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just taking, now a can of evaporated milk is 410 grams, that's just under 500 mils. and this is 397. So as you can see, obviously this is more than that. So all I'm doing is I'm just putting this in there. So what I've done is I've kind of cheated a little bit. I've refrigerated these because this needs to be, it's one of those things, it's like if you imagine like a Baileys or whatever, it has to be cold. Okay, so if you're going to make this to serve quickly, I would recommend that you chill the evaporated milk, chill the condensed milk, because that's exactly what I did, and then just and chill the vodka, which is again is what I did, because then it is, you already 2/3 of the way there. The best thing, of course, about vodka doesn't freeze. Okay, so if you were to put a bottle of vodka in the freezer, it will never completely freeze. So that's cool, which is why you can then use this as well. Now this is a lot of vodka, okay? Whole condensed milk can full of vodka also goes in here. So if you don't like it to be strong, then just put less vodka in. Maybe just take a little bit out of there, because this is completely full. And then you need to just shake this. So make sure that this is closed, okay? And then you can practice your cocktail skills. Remember, this is glass, so you might want to use a cocktail shaker. And I would recommend that if you do this kind of thing, remember that the condensed milk is at the bottom. So you do need to give yourself a bit of a workout. So this is brilliant arm exercises. Just make sure that the lid is on properly, and then just go wild, you know. So this is really good stress relief if you've had a hectic week. I have got these lovely little glasses with little gold rims, and they kind of remind me of Springboky type things. So what you do, if you get a little bit of cinnamon, I like to use a little bit of cinnamon sugar. You just take that in a little bit of water. You can just dip it in a little bit of water, okay? And there's your decoration for your glass. Really, really simple, because all that you're doing is you're just putting a little taste of this on. So now back to the phyllo pastry samosas. So all that I've done is I've just covered it to keep it from drying out completely. So I have got a really old ruler that I like to use for when I make cook sisters, because it's nice and heavy, and I just think it works brilliantly. So it's not always about how many gadgets you've got, okay? The cool thing about South African food is we love to improvise. You know, I see people when they make stand ribs and stuff, and they do all these brilliant things to create barbecues, and I just laugh my head off, because that is so classic South African, and I love that. So my pizza cutter, knife will do absolutely fine. Just make sure it is sharp. Okay, now I have just used a guide. It's not the end of the world if it's not 100% a third of this. You kind of just need a little strip that you're going to put your filling into. So I've just taken this pack of phyllo pastry, and I'm just cutting it into thirds. So it's fairly likely that I'm not going to have enough melted butter, which is not a problem, okay? Don't worry about stuff like that. So what I've got now is I have got sheets of phyllo pastry. Phyllo pastry is a bit of a pain to work with, okay? It dries out really quickly, and then it tends to split. So I'm just going to make sure my hands are clean, again, because I'm going to be using them quite extensively now. A good idea if you wanted to speed up this process, this custard is already setting, as you can see, but it is really warm, so I might need to wait a little while. So in the meantime, this is why you can do this kind of thing now. In the meantime, all that I've done is I've taken unsalted butter, and I've put it in the microwave for 40 seconds. And so I'm just using a pastry brush, and I'm just going to brush this. So it does tend to help. Phyllo pastry, like I say, is a pain. It does help if you hold the side. What I'm trying to do, and this is why this is a good time to do this now while that is cooling. So you're going to be brushing each bit. So you need 2 of these little sheets for this, okay? So you can do one of 2 things. You can either put this onto another one in the middle, which is what I would possibly recommend you do, or you can put this on the side on a different one like this, which is what I'm going to do. And then just put them one on top of each other, or you can just leave it as it is, roll it over, and then just use the same thing and do one at a time. It's up to you, you know, experiment, work whichever way works best for you. And really, really simply, all that you're going to do, and I'm just going to demonstrate one for you because that mixture isn't really cool enough to do this, okay? I just have to warn you. It's still far too warm for this little exercise, but I would put it outside if I'm honest. So you need 2 phyllo pastry sheets per samosa. Okay, and this is, like I say, it's fidgety, so just be mindful when you do this to kind of try and line it up one on top of each other. So then you need just a tablespoon. Ordinary tablespoon is absolutely fine. You take 1 tablespoon. Now remember, I haven't had that long. 1 tablespoon of filling, and you put it on one side. As I said, I would recommend that you do cool this down a bit more because I don't think it's cool enough. And then you fold a little triangle. Whichever way you want to do it, it's absolutely fine. And then fold the triangle over the other side. Okay, let me see if you can see what I'm doing. Okay, fold it the other side. This is very good origami practice, okay? So don't be scared if you make a mistake. The point is you're doing something you haven't done before, okay? So don't sweat the small stuff. Enjoy the process. It's a really cool thing to do. Now what I've done is just to show you, before I flip it over, I've just folded this little parcel to the one side. So now what you do is you can fold it back the other way. And that way you make sure that this is about as secure as possible. Now remember, this mixture is wet. Okay, this is not well, it's not samosa filling. It's a savory filling as you'd have. This mixture is pretty wet. Okay, so, and I've rolled it back the other way. So what I've got now, and I'm just going to do this carefully, what I've got now is I've got this little parcel. I'm going to show you my hand, little triangle. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put that onto a baking dish. And this is where you need water, because you're going to be washing your hands quite regularly now. A little bit of water. And so what I've done is I've just pre-mixed some cinnamon and some sugar. Okay, and so I have sprayed this baking dish. Okay, I have sprayed that, so that is not going to go, it's not going to stick to it now. And then that goes in the oven at 220 degrees for 15 minutes. This recipe is supposed to be sufficient for 24 of these samosas. So, as I said, I've never actually tasted this before. This is a complete first for me. I happen to see this made as part of a potjie competition because, of course, you know, go on holiday and you still watch food programs. Hey ho, busman's holiday. So, but the point is, you know, the recipes are South African food. It is about taking classical things and kind of reinventing them and taking them with and bringing them over and making them our own for the UK market. So I'm going to be having a nice feast of Milktart shooters. That's a first. That'll be a first for me. I've never had that before. And then I'm going to have some Milktart samosas as well. I'll share some pictures, of course. Really, really simple. There's nothing complicated about this at all. Thank you for joining me as always, and I'll see you back in my kitchen next week. Thank you. Bye.